Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. That way, you'll always stay connected to our stories and never miss the next adventure. Bryn had studied apex predators on 9 different worlds. She'd tracked nocturnal hunters through bioluminescent jungles, documented pack behavior on ice planets where the wind could flay skin from bone, and once, just once, gotten close enough to a Verath thundercat to count its teeth. 32, in case anyone was wondering. She wasn't wondering anymore, mostly because she'd spent the last 3 weeks trying not to die. That was the job she loved. The job she was good at. The job that made her feel like her dual degrees in xenobiology and behavioral ecology actually meant something. And now? Now she was wiping up spilled nutritional paste in a daycare center. "This is a lateral move," her department head had said, which was bureaucrat speak for, "We're demoting you, but don't want the paperwork." The diplomatic corps specifically requested someone with your expertise in dangerous fauna. Dangerous fauna. Right. Station Umbra 9 floated in neutral space, a gleaming monument to interspecies cooperation and, more importantly, lucrative trade agreements. While ambassadors and corporate representatives argued over mineral rights and shipping lanes, their offspring needed somewhere to go. Thus, the Interspecies Youth Development Center, which sounded so much better than the place where we dump kids while their parents argue about money. Bryn had been there for exactly 4 hours, and she already hated everything about it. The facility was too bright, too clean, too aggressively cheerful. Murals of smiling aliens covered the walls. Wildly inaccurate murals, she noted with professional disdain. Whoever painted them had clearly never seen a real Threskin, because Threskins didn't smile. They had beaks. The recreation zones were color-coded by age group and species compatibility, because apparently even children needed to be segregated for optimal diplomatic outcomes. And the noise. Stars above. The noise. Squealing. Chittering, the occasional low-frequency rumble that made her back teeth ache. 38 different species of children, all contained in one space station, all making sounds that evolution had specifically designed to get on her nerves. "You'll be taking the specialized cases," Gordon had explained that morning, his 3 chins wobbling with what might have been sympathy. Might have been gas. Hard to tell with Gordon. He was her immediate supervisor, a human with the personality of wet cardboard and a pathological fear of anything that could be classified as a liability incident. "Specialized cases," Bryn repeated, already knowing she'd regret asking. "Meaning what, exactly?" Gordon's eye twitched. Just the left one, a little flutter that told her everything she needed to know. "The Calthri cubs." Ah, there it was. The Calthri. Apex predators from a planet that made Death World classifications look like tourism ratings. A species that hunted in packs, killed for sport and survival, and had evolved on a world where literally everything, from the plants to the weather to the microscopic organisms in the soil, was actively trying to kill them. And they'd sent their children here. 3 of them, to be precise. "They've been problematic," Gordon continued, pulling up incident reports on his datapad. The list scrolled, and scrolled, and kept scrolling. 18 equipment damage incidents, 3 dozen noise complaints, 6 requests for removal from other parents, and 1 formal protest from the Velusian delegation after the Cubs somehow got into their secured quarters and dismantled their communication array. "Dismantled?" Bryn asked, interest piqued despite herself. "Completely. Down to individual components. Sorted by size and composition." Gordon's double chin quivered. The Velusians were not pleased. I bet. Bryn fought back a smile. Did the cubs hurt anyone? Well, no. Threaten anyone? Not as such. Then what's the actual problem, Gordon? He stared at her like she'd asked why water was wet. They're Calthri, Bryn. Predators. The other children are terrified of them. The staff won't go near them without backup. Insurance is having a collective breakdown. We need someone who can manage them. Manage them. As if they were equipment. As if they were problems to be solved rather than children who'd been dumped in a sterile station millions of miles from their home world while their parents played politics. But Bryn needed this job, even if it was a demotion wrapped in diplomatic language. Bills didn't pay themselves, and her last expedition had ended with her research vessel being torn apart by a magnetic storm. Most of her data had survived. Her career prospects, not so much. Fine, she said. Where are they? Gordon actually looked relieved. Recreation Zone 9 Gamma. We've isolated them from the main groups, for everyone's safety. Of course they had. Zone 9 Gamma turned out to be a glorified storage room with some foam mats and obsolete play equipment. No windows, no natural light simulation, nothing that remotely resembled a stimulating environment. Just beige walls and the faint smell of disinfectant, and 3 small, furred bundles of concentrated murder potential. Bryn stopped in the doorway, professional instincts kicking in immediately. Observe first. Always observe first. The Calthri cubs were smaller than she'd expected, roughly the size of terrier dogs, though comparing them to anything as domesticated as a dog was probably an insult. 6 limbs each, 4 primary legs and 2 smaller manipulator arms tucked against their chests. Dense fur in mottled patterns of gray and amber. Perfect camouflage for their home world's rocky terrain. Retractable claws that she could see even from here, kept partially extended. Triangular ears that swiveled independently, tracking sounds she couldn't hear. And their eyes. Oh, their eyes. Too intelligent, too aware. The kind of eyes that calculated angles and trajectories, that measured threat levels and escape routes, that saw her not as a caretaker, but as an unknown variable in their environment. One of them, the largest, with a distinctive dark stripe across his snout, stood at the front. Protective stance, weight balanced, ready to move. The leader, then. Behind him, a slightly smaller cub with lighter fur and remarkably steady eyes. Female, if Bryn remembered her xenobiology correctly. The thinker of the group. And tumbling over a deflated exercise ball in the corner, the smallest of the 3. Also female, all chaotic energy and 0 impulse control, judging by the way she was attacking the ball like it had personally offended her. "Hello," Bryn said, keeping her voice level and calm. Non-threatening, but not patronizing. You didn't baby talk to predators, not even young ones. "I'm Bryn. I'll be working with you." The leader's ears flicked forward, listening. "I know you didn't ask for this," she continued, stepping fully into the room but leaving the door open. "Always leave an exit. Being stuck here while your parents do boring adult things. Trust me, if I could be somewhere else right now, I would be." Was she trauma dumping to alien children on her first day? Yes. Yes, she was. But something about their isolated situation, their obvious intelligence, their complete and utter boredom made her want to be honest. The smallest cub stopped attacking the ball and stared at her. The middle one tilted her head, processing. The leader took a single step forward. Bryn held her ground. This was a test. Everything was a test with predators. Another step. Those amber eyes never left her face. Then, with a movement so fast she almost missed it, the leader cub bounded forward, circled her twice, and sat directly on her foot. The weight was negligible. The meaning wasn't. "Well," Bryn said, looking down at the small predator who'd claimed her foot as territory, "I guess we're doing this." The middle cub chirped, an oddly pleasant sound like wind chimes made of bone, and approached more cautiously. She sniffed Bryn's leg, her equipment belt, the data pad hanging from her hip. The smallest one simply launched herself across the room and collided with Bryn's shin with all the grace of a meteor strike. And that, apparently, was that. By the end of hour 1, Bryn had learned their names from the facility records. Naka, the bold leader who'd claimed her foot. Hurim, the thoughtful one who'd spent 20 minutes examining the stitching on Bryn's boots. And Vess, the tiny chaos agent who was currently trying to climb inside Bryn's jacket pocket. By the end of hour 2, she'd watched them systematically dismantle a cleaning drone that had wandered into their space. Not destroy, dismantle. With precision and clear purpose, each component carefully separated and examined. "Naka, that's station property," she said, not really expecting them to stop. They didn't stop. "Hurim, I'm going to get yelled at for this." Hurim chirped and continued sorting circuit boards by size. "Vess, if you eat that power cell, I swear—" Vess did not eat the power cell. She did, however, present it to Bryn with a proud little trill, tail wagging so hard her entire back end shook. And there it was, in that moment. The thing everyone else had missed because they were too busy being afraid. These weren't monsters. These weren't problems to be managed or threats to be contained. They were bored, spectacularly, catastrophically bored. Predators, any predators, needed mental stimulation. Their brains were wired for problem-solving, for hunting, for taking apart complex challenges and finding solutions. Stick them in an empty room with nothing to engage their minds, and of course, they'd start taking apart anything they could find. They weren't being destructive. They were being exactly what evolution had made them. Intelligent, curious, adaptive. "All right," Bryn said, sitting down cross-legged on the floor. All 3 cubs immediately converged on her, a small pile of fur and claws and 2 intelligent eyes. "Here's the deal. You're stuck here, I'm stuck here, and neither of us is happy about it. But maybe we can make it less terrible." Naka's ear swiveled toward her, listening. "Tomorrow, I'm bringing you things to take apart. Real things, interesting things, puzzles, tech that's already broken. Maybe some biological samples if I can smuggle them past Gordon, who is definitely going to have that aneurysm he's been working on." Hurim made a low rumbling sound that might have been approval. "But," Bryn continued, gently pushing Vess's questing paws away from her pocket, "you have to promise not to eat anything important. Or anyone. Especially not me, because I'm the only thing standing between you and a very boring existence." Vess chirped and immediately tried to climb into her lap. Naka huffed, definitely a laugh, and settled against her leg. Hurim, ever cautious, took up a position where she could watch both Bryn and the door. A pack position. They were already treating her like pack. This was either the best decision she'd ever made or the worst, and honestly, at this point in her career, Bryn couldn't tell the difference anymore. The rest of the shift passed in a blur of fur and supervision and 3 pairs of eyes watching her every move. When Gordon checked in, via intercom, because of course he wasn't brave enough to enter the room, his relief was audible. "No incidents?" he asked, sounding genuinely shocked. "None," Bryn confirmed, scratching behind Naka's ears. His back leg kicked involuntarily, and she filed that information away. Even apex predators had their weaknesses. "Well, good. Excellent. Keep up the good work." The intercom clicked off. "He's terrified of you," Bryn told the cubs. Which is fair, honestly. You could probably kill him in about 16 different ways. Naka's tail wagged. That wasn't encouragement. More tail wagging. When the shift finally ended and Bryn prepared to leave, all 3 cubs followed her to the door. Not trying to escape, just following, reluctant to see her go. "I'll be back tomorrow," she promised, and meant it. With better toys, and probably a reprimand from someone about that drone you murdered. Vess made a sad little sound that absolutely destroyed Bryn's heart. "Don't do that. Don't make those sounds at me." She crouched down and immediately had a lap full of predator cubs. "Tomorrow, I promise. And we're going to figure this out, okay? You 3 deserve better than this room." As she walked back to her quarters that night, Bryn pulled up everything the database had on Calthri behavior and culture. There wasn't much. The species kept to themselves mostly, and what information existed was heavily focused on their military capabilities and threat assessments. But there was one thing. One small note in an anthropological survey. Calthri pack bonds were sacred, chosen, unbreakable. Cubs selected their pack through instinct and trust, and once chosen, that bond lasted for life. Bryn looked at the notation, then at the timestamp on the facility logs, showing when the cubs had first arrived. 6 weeks. They'd been isolated in that room for 6 weeks, with minimal contact and 0 enrichment. 6 weeks of staff too scared to interact with them, other children too frightened to approach them, parents demanding they be removed entirely. 6 weeks of 3 intelligent, social predators being treated like dangerous cargo instead of children. "Well," Bryn said to her empty quarters, "that explains a lot." Tomorrow, she decided, she'd bring them a puzzle box from the science lab, and maybe some of the preserved plant samples from her personal collection, and definitely some better food than whatever nutritional paste they'd been getting. Tomorrow, things would be different. She had no idea how right she was, or how much 3 small predators were about to change everything she thought she knew about connection, trust, and what it meant to be chosen. But she'd find out. They all would. Bryn showed up the next morning with a bag full of contraband that would absolutely get her fired if Gordon found out. A disassembled puzzle box from the engineering lab. 3 broken datapads with varying levels of complexity. A collection of mineral samples from different worlds, each with unique crystalline structures. And, because she wasn't completely reckless, a basic first aid kit, just in case. The cubs were waiting at the door when she arrived, all 3 of them, sitting in a perfect line like they'd been there for hours, which, given the timestamp on the door log, they had been. "Morning," Bryn said, trying not to show how much that observation affected her. "Miss me?" Naka's tail wagged so hard he nearly fell over. Vess launched herself at Bryn's shins with the subtlety of a tactical missile. Huram simply chirped and pressed her head against Bryn's hand. Yeah, they'd missed her. "All right, monsters, I brought gifts." She emptied the bag onto the floor, spreading everything out. "Let's see what you can do." What they could do, as it turned out, was terrifying. Naka took the most complex datapad and had it disassembled in under 3 minutes. Not broken. Disassembled. Every screw in a neat pile, every component separated and organized. He examined each piece with those 2 intelligent eyes, turning them over, testing connections, understanding. Huram claimed the puzzle box and approached it like a mathematician tackling an equation. She'd try one configuration, pause, reassess, try another. No frustration, no impatience. Just methodical, careful problem-solving that would put most adult engineers to shame. Vess grabbed a mineral sample and immediately tried to eat it. "No," Bryn said, gently extracting the rock from small jaws. "That's not food, Vess. That's a carbonate formation from the Thel system, and it will absolutely mess up your digestion." Vess looked offended but accepted a protein stick instead, then went back to examining the rock with more appropriate levels of curiosity. By midday, Bryn had documentation that would either get her promoted or terminated. Probably terminated. But the data was incredible. The cubs weren't just intelligent. They were gifted. Their spatial reasoning, their ability to understand complex mechanical systems, their pattern recognition skills were all off the charts. And they were children, juvenile predators whose brains were still developing. What would they be capable of as adults? "You three are wasted in this place," Bryn muttered, watching Harim successfully solve the puzzle box on her fourth attempt. "You should be in advanced learning programs, not locked in a room because people are too scared to see past the teeth." Naka brought her a small gear he'd extracted from one of the data pads, dropped it in her hand, tail wagging, clearly proud of his work. "Yeah, buddy, that's a voltage regulator. You have good taste in components." His chest puffed up. Definitely understood the praise, if not the specific words. That's when things got weird. Vess disappeared behind a stack of old floor mats and returned dragging something shiny. A bolt. Just a simple bolt, probably fallen from some maintenance project weeks ago. She presented it to Bryn with great ceremony, making a trilling sound that seemed significant. "Thank you," Bryn said, taking it. It's a very nice bolt." Vess's entire body wiggled with pleasure. The next day, Naka brought her a piece of wire. Not just any wire. He'd clearly searched for it, selected it specifically, placed it in her hand and waited for her reaction. "It's great," Bryn assured him. "Really great wire." 2 days after that, Harim showed up with a flower. An actual flower, slightly wilted, from the hydroponics bay on level 3, which meant the cubs had figured out how to access the ventilation system and were traveling through the station unsupervised. Bryn should have reported it, should have raised the alarm, increased security, done something responsible and career-preserving. Instead, she put the flower in a cup of water and thanked Harim like she'd been given something precious. Because to Harim, it was precious. You could see it in the way she watched Bryn's face, ears forward, waiting for approval, for acceptance. The gifts kept coming. Rocks, more wire, bits of colorful plastic, another flower, a washer, some kind of circuit board that Naka was particularly proud of. Each item presented with the same ceremony, the same hopeful anticipation. Bryn started keeping them in the corner of the room, arranging them carefully. The cubs would come over between activities and adjust the placement, moving things with deliberate precision. The wire needed to be at a certain angle. The rocks had to be in a specific formation. The flowers, there were 4 now, created a border of sorts. It looked like junk, a pile of random debris that should have been disposed of weeks ago. But watching the cubs work on it, watching their careful attention to every detail, Bryn knew it wasn't junk. She just didn't know what it was. The other staff noticed, of course. Hard to miss 3 predator cubs trotting through the facility with offerings clutched in their small jaws. "That's unsanitary," one of the caregivers said, wrinkling her nose at the growing collection. "You should throw it out." "It's enrichment," Bryn countered. "They're engaging in collecting behavior, which is completely normal for their development stage." "It's hoarding." "It's meaningful to them." "It's a pile of garbage." Bryn smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "Then I guess it's my pile of garbage, isn't it?" Gordon showed up on the 5th day, surveyed the corner pile with visible distress, and made several strangled sounds that might have been words. "Bryn, what is that?" "A learning exercise in organization and categorization." "It looks like a trash heap." "Your face looks like a trash heap, Gordon, but I don't comment on it." His left eye twitched. Both chins quivered. "Dispose of it by end of shift." "No." The word hung in the air between them. Gordon's expression cycled through confusion, anger, and finally landed on something like fear. Not of Bryn, of the three small predators who had stopped their activities and were now watching him with absolute focus. Pack defense behavior. They sensed her tension, his threat, and they were ready to act. "We'll discuss this later," Gordon said, backing toward the door, with HR present. "Looking forward to it." When he was gone, Bryn sat down next to the collection of wire and rock and flowers. The cubs immediately piled around her, a warm mass of fur and trust. "I don't know what you're building," she told them quietly, "but whatever it is, it matters to you. And that means it matters to me." Naka licked her hand. Huram leaned against her shoulder. Vess curled up in her lap and made that bone chime chirp that meant contentment. And in the corner, the pile grew. The meeting with HR never happened, mostly because the HR representative took one look at three Calthri cubs sitting protectively around Bryn and suddenly remembered an urgent appointment elsewhere. Funny how that worked. But the whispers started. Oh, the whispers. "She's encouraging their hoarding instincts. It's a health hazard. What if they start bringing back organic matter? Dead things? They're predators. She's going to get hurt." Bryn ignored all of it and focused on documentation. If she was going down for this, she'd go down with data. Lots and lots of data. She started photographing the arrangement, taking notes on which cub brought what, when, and how they positioned each item. Naka preferred structural elements, wires, bolts, anything that could connect or support. Huram selected for aesthetic variation, rocks of different colors, flowers in various stages of bloom, that one piece of blue plastic that caught the light just right. Vess was chaos incarnate, bringing everything from a dried leaf to a stolen stylus that Bryn absolutely had to return before someone noticed. The pattern became clearer. This wasn't random collection. This was construction. The rocks formed a rough circle. The wires connected specific points, creating lines and angles that seemed intentional. The flowers marked cardinal positions, wilted but carefully maintained. And in the center, a growing pile of smaller items, screws, washers, fragments of circuit boards, arranged in a spiral. It was beautiful, in a strange, mechanical, organic way, like something between art installation and ritual site. But what did it mean? Bryn spent her off hours researching Calthri culture, which was frustratingly sparse. The species was private, revealing little about their social structures and traditions to outsiders. Most documentation focused on their military capabilities, their hunting techniques, their role as elite security forces across multiple sectors. Nothing about cubs, nothing about child rearing, nothing about gifts or collecting behavior. She was about to give up when she found a reference buried in an old anthropological database. Just a footnote, really, from a human researcher who'd spent 6 months on a Calthri colony world. Juvenile pack bonding rituals observed but not explained. Cubs appear to construct offerings for chosen pack leaders using available materials. Access to ceremonies denied. That was it. One paragraph. No follow-up studies, no detailed analysis. Just an observation and a closed door. But it was something. Bryn sat in her quarters, staring at that single paragraph, and felt something shift in her understanding. An offering for a chosen pack leader. The cubs had chosen her. She pulled up the communication directory, hands shaking slightly, and searched for Calthri diplomatic contacts. There had to be someone she could ask, someone who could tell her if she was interpreting this correctly or completely losing her mind. She found a name, Marath, cultural liaison stationed at the Calthri embassy on the Outer Rim. His contact information included a notation that he accepted inquiries regarding interspecies relations. Good enough. The message took 3 days to route through proper channels. When the response came, it was a video call request. Bryn accepted, and her screen filled with the image of an adult Calthri. Larger than she'd expected, easily the size of a terrier, with gray-white fur and scars across his muzzle that spoke of a long, complicated life. His eyes held the same unsettling intelligence as the cubs, but tempered with something else. Wisdom, maybe, or exhaustion. "You asked about pack hearts," Marath said without preamble. His voice was deeper than she'd anticipated, with a growling undertone that her translation software struggled to capture. "Why?" "I work with 3 Calthri cubs, Naka, Huram, and Vess. They've been collecting items and arranging them in a specific pattern. I think," she paused, suddenly uncertain, "I think it might be significant." Marath's ears swiveled forward. "Show me." Bryn switched to a recording she'd made that morning, showing the arrangement in detail. The circle of stones, the connecting wires, the flowers and spiral of small components. She watched Marath's face, if you could call it that, for any reaction. His ears flattened, his tail went completely still. And then he made a sound that her translator couldn't interpret at all. "That's a pack heart," he said finally. "A traditional offering from cubs to their chosen pack leader. It means—" He stopped, seemed to struggle with the translation. "It means you are theirs, and they are yours. Completely. Absolutely." Bryn felt her breath catch. "I don't understand." "Each item represents an aspect of pack bonding. Strength." He gestured at the rocks. "Connection." The wires. "Beauty." The flowers. "Utility." The small mechanical pieces. They have chosen you as their pack leader, and they are telling you this in the oldest way our species knows. "But I'm not Calthri." "No," Marath agreed, "you're not." Which makes this unprecedented. In all of recorded history, cubs have never offered a pack heart to another species. The weight of that statement settled over Bryn like a physical thing. These 3 isolated, misunderstood cubs had looked at her, a human, a completely different species, someone who'd only known them for weeks, and decided she was pack. "What do I do?" she asked, voice rougher than intended. "You honor it," Marath said simply. "The pack heart is sacred. It cannot be destroyed or dismissed. To do so would be to reject the cubs themselves, to tell them they have no pack, no family, nothing. Gordon, my supervisor, wants me to throw it away." Marath's growl was immediate and threatening. "That would be a grave insult, possibly grounds for formal diplomatic complaint. At minimum, psychological trauma to the cubs." "I'm not going to throw it away," Bryn said quickly. "I just needed to understand what I was protecting." Something in Marath's expression softened. "You've been kind to them. The cubs wouldn't have chosen you otherwise. Calthri young are excellent judges of character. They see past deception, past social masks. They choose pack based on truth. And they'd chosen her." Bryn, the washed-up xenobiologist who'd been demoted to daycare duty. The sarcastic, burnt-out researcher who'd shown up with broken toys and zero expectations. They'd looked at her and seen someone worth choosing. "Thank you," she said to Marath, "for explaining." "Protect them," he replied, "and protect their gift. It's more than wire and stone. It's trust made physical." The call ended, leaving Bryn alone with the weight of understanding. She went to the facility early the next morning, before anyone else arrived. The cubs were already awake, curled around their pack heart like guards protecting treasure. "I know what this is now," Bryn told them, sitting down beside the arrangement. "I know what you're telling me." 3 pairs of eyes watched her. Waiting. "I'm honored," she continued, and meant it with every fiber of her being. "You chose me, and I'm choosing you back. Pack." The word felt strange in her mouth, but right. Fundamentally, essentially right. Naka's tail began to wag. Hurim made that bone chime chirp, and Vess launched herself into Bryn's lap with enough force to knock the wind from her lungs, making happy sounds that no predator should be capable of. When Gordon arrived an hour later with 2 security personnel, clearly ready to force the issue of disposal, he found Bryn standing in front of the pack heart, with 3 cubs flanking her in perfect defensive formation. "No," she said before he could speak. "Bryn, this is a direct order. This is a pack heart, a sacred cultural artifact. If you try to remove it, you'll be committing a diplomatic incident that will absolutely end your career and possibly cause an interspecies conflict. Ask your legal team. I'll wait." Gordon's eye twitched. His chins quivered. He looked at the cubs, at Bryn, at the arrangement of wire and stone and flowers. "This is highly irregular," he managed. "So am I, and so are they. We're all highly irregular together." The security personnel exchanged glances. One of them whispered something to Gordon, who went pale. "Fine," he said finally. "Keep your pile of junk. But if there are any incidents, there won't be." After they left, Bryn sat down hard, adrenaline making her hands shake. The cubs immediately piled on her, offering comfort and solidarity and warmth. "We're in this together now," she told them. "Whatever happens next, we face it as a pack." Naka licked her face. Hurim pressed close against her side. Vess tried to climb inside her jacket, and partially succeeded. In the corner, the pack heart sat in its place of honor. A pile of wires, rocks, and flowers that meant everything. Trust made physical. Love made visible. A promise that said, "You are ours, and we are yours, and nothing can break this bond." Bryn looked at it, really looked at it, and felt tears prick her eyes. "It's beautiful," she whispered. And it was. 3 weeks passed in a strange sort of peace. The cubs thrived under Bryn's care, their intelligence blooming with proper stimulation and attention. The pack heart remained in its honored corner, occasionally receiving new additions that the cubs selected with grave deliberation. And Gordon kept his distance, which suited everyone just fine. Then the alarms started. Bryn was midway through explaining basic orbital mechanics to Hurim, who was following along perfectly, the little genius, when the station's emergency system kicked in, with a blaring wail that made all 3 cubs flatten their ears. "Attention all personnel. Critical systems failure in Life Support Sector 9. All non-essential staff evacuate affected areas immediately. Engineering teams report to command." The announcement repeated. The lights flickered to emergency mode, and through the walls, Bryn could hear the distinct sound of panic. She pulled up her datapad, accessing station schematics through her basic clearance. Life Support Sector 9 handled oxygen recycling for a quarter of the station, including the diplomatic quarters. Failure meant people would start running out of breathable air in, she checked the numbers, Approximately 6 hours. Engineers were already scrambling. She could see their status updates flooding the network. The problem was in the circuitry, a catastrophic cascade failure in a maintenance junction that was designed for robotic access only. The space was too confined for adult-sized engineers, and their manipulator tools were too large for the delicate work required. Someone suggested sending in maintenance drones. The drones couldn't navigate the complex three-dimensional wiring without damaging adjacent systems. Time estimate for careful drone work: 8 hours. They had 6. Someone else proposed shutting down the entire sector and rerouting through backup systems. The backups were already at capacity from a previous malfunction. Overloading them would cause station-wide failures. Bryn watched the updates scroll past, watched the time estimates tick down, watched grown adults with engineering degrees argue about solutions that wouldn't work. And then she looked at Naka, who was watching her with those two intelligent eyes. At Hurim, who'd disassembled and reassembled complex circuitry dozens of times. At Vess, who could squeeze into spaces that shouldn't physically accommodate her body. "No," Bryn said out loud. "That's insane." Naka tilted his head, questioning. "They're children," she continued, arguing with herself. "I can't ask them to fix critical station infrastructure. That's insane. I'd be fired, arrested, possibly thrown out an airlock." Hurim chirped and approached, pressing her head against Bryn's hand. Trusting. Willing. "You don't even know what I'm thinking." But they did, didn't they? Pack bonds went both ways. They could read her tension, her calculation, her desperate consideration of options that shouldn't even be options. Vess grabbed Bryn's sleeve and tugged, making an insistent sound. "Stars above. I'm actually considering this." She pulled up the engineering schematics again, really studying them this time. The damaged junction was a nightmare of tight spaces and delicate connections. Adult hands would never fit. The Cub's manipulator arms, though, small, dexterous, capable of precision work. They'd been training themselves for weeks. Every puzzle she'd given them, every piece of tech they'd dismantled and rebuilt. She'd thought it was enrichment, stimulation to keep them occupied. What if it had been preparation? Bryn opened a direct channel to Engineering Command. "This is Bryn from the Youth Development Center. I have a solution to your Life Support 9 problem." There was a pause. Then, "Who is this? Clear this channel. We have an emergency." "I know. I'm telling you I have a solution. 3 of them, actually. Small, smart, and very good with delicate circuitry." Another pause, longer this time. "Are you talking about the Calthri Cubs?" "Yes." "Absolutely not. They're children. They're children who can fit in spaces your engineers can't. Children who've been training on complex mechanical systems for weeks. Children who are your only option if you want to fix this in time." The liability alone. There are 800 people on this station who are going to run out of air in 6 hours. You want to explain to them why you chose insurance paperwork over their lives? Silence. She could practically hear the mental calculations happening. "They're predators. Dangerous." "They're my pack," Bryn said firmly, "and they'll work with me supervising. No one else touches them, no one else gives them orders. Me and the Cubs, or nothing." More silence. Then a different voice. Older, tired. "This is Chief Engineer Wallace. If you're serious about this, get to Sector 9 Junction 14B. Now. I'll brief you on site." Bryn looked at the 3 Cubs. "Last chance to back out. This is dangerous. It's probably illegal. And if we mess up, people could get hurt, including you." Naka stood, tail high, ready. Hurim moved to flank him, calm and focused. Vess bounced on her toes, all eager energy. Right then, pack up. We've got work to do. Junction 14B was chaos. Engineers everywhere arguing about approaches and timelines. The air already tasted stale, recycling systems struggling, and, in the center of it all, a maintenance panel pulled away to reveal a nightmare of tangled wiring and burnt-out circuits. Chief Engineer Wallace was a heavy-set woman with gray hair and the ETE expression of someone who'd seen too many emergencies. She looked at Bryn, then at the cubs, then back at Bryn. "You're really doing this? We're really doing this? If they get hurt, they won't. We're pack. They trust me, and I trust them." Wallace studied the cubs for a long moment. Naka met her gaze without flinching. "All right, here's what we need." She pulled up schematics, showing the damaged areas. 3 main circuit pathways need to be reconnected. Sections A, B, and C. Each one requires precise wire placement and soldering at connection points. One mistake, and we could fry the entire system. "They can do it," Bryn said with more confidence than she felt. "I hope you're right." They rigged up a communication system, tiny cameras and audio feeds so the cubs could receive instructions. Bryn ran through the plan 3 times, making sure they understood. Naka would take Section A, the heaviest work requiring strength. Huram got Section B, the most complex routing. Vess would handle Section C, which required fitting into an absolutely ridiculous space. The cubs listened, ears forward, processing. When Bryn finished, all 3 chirped their understanding. "Okay," she said, throat tight. "Be careful. Please, be careful." They entered the junction. The next hour was the longest of Bryn's life. She watched through camera feeds as 3 small predators navigated a maze of wires and circuits with absolute focus. Naka's strong manipulator arms reconnected heavy cables. Huram's careful precision routed delicate data lines. And Vess, stars above, Vess squeezed into spaces that shouldn't have been physically possible. Naka, left junction. The red wire connects to Terminal 9. A chirp of acknowledgement. Careful movement. Perfect placement. Huram, you need to cross the blue and yellow lines, then secure them with the fastener. Bone chime confirmation. Steady work. No mistakes. Vess, can you reach the back panel? An enthusiastic trill, scrambling sounds, tiny paws fitting into impossible gaps. Around Bryn, the engineers watched in silence. No one spoke. No one dared breathe. "Section A complete," one of the monitors announced. "Section B holding steady." "Section C, wait, that's not possible. That space is too small for—" "Never underestimate a determined cub," Bryn muttered. 48 minutes after they started, all 3 cubs emerged from the junction. Covered in grease, dusty, and absolutely proud of themselves. Vess was making a continuous happy sound. Naka's tail hadn't stopped wagging. Harim simply walked to Bryn and collapsed against her legs. "Did we do good?" her posture seemed to ask. "You did perfect," Bryn whispered, gathering all 3 into her arms. "You did absolutely perfect." Wallace ran diagnostics. The silence stretched. Then, "It's holding. All connections stable. Life support is back online." The relief was palpable. Engineers cheered. Someone started crying. And Gordon, who'd appeared at some point, looked like he might actually pass out. The aftermath was complicated. There were debriefings and incident reports, and at least 6 different committees that wanted to discuss the Calthri cub incident. But underneath all the bureaucracy, there was a new reality. The cubs were heroes. Undeniable, actual heroes who'd saved 800 lives. Suddenly, everyone wanted to be their friend. Other children approached cautiously, offering toys and games. Staff members who'd previously refused to enter their room now volunteered for shifts. Parents who'd demanded their removal sent formal apologies. Bryn shut it all down. "You don't get to fear them one day and exploit them the next," she told anyone who'd listen. "They're not props for your redemption story. They're cubs who did what needed doing, because no one else could." The Calthri government reached out within 3 days, a formal communication from their homeworld expressing gratitude and pride in their young, and an offer for Bryn, director of a new interspecies youth integration program, focused on understanding and supporting Calthri cubs in diplomatic settings. The salary was ridiculous, the resources were unlimited, and she could bring her pack. "There's one condition," Bryn said during the negotiation call. "Naka, Huram, and Vess stay with me. Non-negotiable." The Calthri official, an elegant older female with ceremonial markings, inclined her head. "We would expect nothing less. Pack bonds are sacred." "Their parents have already agreed. You saved their cubs from isolation and gave them purpose. You honored their pack heart. By our customs, you are as much their parent as we are." When Bryn told the cubs, they celebrated by trying to add her datapad to the pack heart. She managed to negotiate them down to just the stylus. The new quarters on Station Umbra 3 were spacious, well lit, and had a dedicated area for the pack heart. Bryn had it transported with extreme care, every wire and rock and flower preserved exactly as the cubs had arranged them. It sat now in a climate-controlled case, visible but protected. A reminder of trust freely given and choices made. Bryn stood in front of it on their first night in the new space, 3 cubs curled around her feet in a contented pile. "We came a long way from that storage room," she said softly. Naka huffed agreement. Huram chirped. Vess tried to steal her shoe. "You 3 changed everything. You know that?" They probably didn't know the full scope of it. How their pack heart had started conversations across multiple governments about how alien children were treated in diplomatic settings. How their heroism had proven that intelligence and courage weren't limited by species or age. How one pile of wires, rocks, and flowers had challenged everyone's assumptions about what family could look like. But they knew the important part. They knew they were loved. They knew they were pack. And sometimes, that was everything. Bryn looked at the pack heart, at the gift 3 predator cubs had made for her with such care and hope, at the physical manifestation of trust and belonging. "It's beautiful," she said again. "Still true. Always true." The cubs agreed. And somewhere in the galaxy, other cubs would learn that being different didn't mean being alone. That pack could cross species boundaries. That the right person would see your gift, your strange, imperfect offering, and call it exactly what it was: beautiful.